When we try to understand why a narcissist enters intimate relationships with what appears to be very little selectivity, we first have to completely shift the way we think about intimacy from their point of view. Because if we assume they are functioning from the same emotional framework as someone who is capable of authentic connection, we will never truly understand the pattern. We will remain puzzled by decisions that seem reckless, self-sabotaging, contradictory, or nearly impossible to make sense of. The essential insight is this: for many narcissists, physical intimacy is not primarily about connection, desire, emotional closeness, or mutual attraction. Instead, it often operates as a transaction. It becomes a means to achieve something else. Once you understand the goals they are attempting to accomplish, the seemingly indiscriminate nature of their behavior begins to make far more sense. Let me explain what I mean by a transaction. When most people become intimate with another individual, many different elements are involved. There may be genuine attraction toward that specific person. There may be emotional bonding or the hope of creating one. There is often mutual vulnerability. There is shared enjoyment. There is the gradual development of closeness, trust, and emotional safety. Most importantly, the individual themselves matters. Their personality matters. Their character matters. Their unique qualities matter. Their presence matters. Who they are as a human being becomes a central part of the entire experience. But the narcissist is frequently operating from a very different psychological framework. They are not necessarily searching for a particular person. They are searching for something that another person can provide. What they seek is often not the individual themselves, it is the function that individual serves. And what they are looking for usually falls into several different categories. They may be pursuing validation. They may be seeking control. They may be attempting to regulate an unstable emotional state. They may be trying to prove their desirability, their importance, their influence, or their power. Think about what this means in practical terms. If intimacy is being used to obtain validation, to convince themselves that they are attractive, desirable, wanted, admired, or special, then the specific person becomes far less significant. What truly matters is that someone agreed, someone selected them, someone considered them desirable enough to become intimate with. The individual could be almost anyone, as long as they provide that validating experience and reinforce the image the narcissist wants to believe about themselves. If intimacy is being used as a way to establish control, to demonstrate power, to prove they can seduce another person, influence another person's decisions, or gain access to someone's deepest vulnerability, then once again, the specific individual becomes secondary. What matters is the successful exercise of influence. What matters is proving that they can make another person respond to them. What matters is demonstrating dominance over another human being. If intimacy is being used to regulate an uncomfortable internal emotional state, to temporarily escape feelings of emptiness, loneliness, anxiety, shame, insecurity, or emotional fragmentation, then it begins functioning almost like a drug. And when someone is searching for a drug-like effect, they are rarely focused on building a meaningful relationship with the source. They simply want relief. They want distraction. They want temporary comfort. They want the painful feelings to disappear, even if only for a short time. In this state, the narcissist is searching for sensation, stimulation, excitement, novelty, or temporary emotional regulation. Any person who can provide that experience may be viewed as useful. The focus is not on who the person truly is. The focus is on what emotional effect that person can create. This transactional framework explains something that often leaves the partners of narcissists deeply confused. Many people are shocked by what appears to be a complete absence of standards or selectivity. You may discover that the individual your narcissistic partner became involved with is someone they themselves previously described as unattractive, unintelligent, irritating, boring, or uninteresting. Naturally, you begin asking yourself an obvious question. Why would they risk everything for that person? Why would they jeopardize an important relationship for someone who seems to offer less in almost every possible way? Why would they choose that individual? But that question assumes the decision was based on genuine personal preference. The narcissist is often not choosing based on who the person actually is. They are choosing based on whether that individual is available, accessible, responsive, emotionally vulnerable, and capable of satisfying a particular need at that specific moment. The actual human being may become almost irrelevant to the decision. In many ways, it resembles someone who is desperately hungry, eating whatever food happens to be available. The priority is not quality. The priority is satisfying the immediate craving. The immediate need takes precedence over everything else. This comparison helps explain why some narcissists are capable of maintaining multiple intimate relationships simultaneously without showing much internal conflict. For someone capable of genuine emotional attachment, this usually creates significant emotional tension. There are competing loyalties, there are emotional investments, there is guilt, there is internal conflict, there are difficult ethical questions and painful emotional dilemmas. But when relationships become primarily transactional, much of that conflict is dramatically reduced. Each individual serves a different purpose. Each person provides a different source of validation. Each relationship satisfies a different emotional need. Because there is very little genuine emotional investment in the complete person, compartmentalization becomes much easier. The narcissist is not deeply relating to these individuals as whole human beings. They are relating to what those individuals are capable of providing. The relationship becomes centered around utility rather than authentic connection. This transactional nature also explains something else that often seems impossible to understand. A narcissist can become intimate with someone they do not even particularly like. You may eventually discover they were involved with someone they openly criticized, someone they regularly complained about, someone whose company they did not genuinely enjoy, someone they considered annoying, beneath them, or intellectually inferior. To someone who values authentic connection, this appears completely irrational. Yet it becomes understandable once you realize they were never truly relating to that individual in the first place. They were relating to the function that person served. The individual was never the primary focus. The emotional need was the focus. The person simply became a vehicle through which that need could temporarily be fulfilled. This represents a deeply objectifying way of relating to other people. Most narcissists would never consciously describe their behavior in these terms. Many genuinely believe they are experiencing attraction, affection, passion, or emotional connection. Yet these experiences are often far more shallow, conditional, and self-focused than they initially appear. They may have learned how to imitate emotional intimacy remarkably well. They often know how to perform interest. They know how to display passion. They know how to express affection. They understand how to appear emotionally invested. But beneath that performance, there is often very little genuine concern for the other person's inner world. Their thoughts, feelings, struggles, fears, dreams, hopes, and humanity may only matter to the extent that they continue contributing to the narcissist's emotional needs. Once they stop serving that purpose, the level of interest frequently begins to decline. This is why almost any form of validation can become extremely valuable. The narcissist is not searching for treasure. They are searching for evidence. They are trying to complete another psychological transaction. They are attempting to acquire something they feel they cannot generate from within themselves. If multiple people can provide the same emotional reward, then those people gradually become interchangeable. They are no longer viewed primarily as unique individuals with distinct personalities and lives. Instead, they become different sources capable of producing the same desired outcome. When intimacy becomes separated from genuine emotional connection, people inevitably become replaceable. Not because every individual is actually the same, but because the narcissist was never truly seeking a unique person to begin with. They were seeking a specific emotional result. They were pursuing an internal experience rather than a meaningful relationship. The transactional nature of these intimate encounters reveals something even deeper. While intimacy can certainly serve many different psychological functions, one of its most important functions for the narcissist is the collection of evidence. The narcissist is constantly building an internal case. They are gathering proof. They are collecting experiences that temporarily convince them they are desirable, important, powerful, attractive, admired, significant, and worthy of attention. Remember, the narcissist often lacks a stable internal sense of self-worth. They do not possess a deep, secure, and lasting feeling that they matter regardless of outside approval. Their self-esteem depends heavily upon external feedback. As a result, they spend enormous amounts of emotional energy attempting to prove their value to themselves over and over again. Every intimate encounter becomes another piece of evidence. Every successful seduction becomes another piece of evidence. Every person who chooses them becomes another piece of evidence. Every expression of admiration becomes another piece of evidence. Every compliment, every flirtation, every romantic success becomes another file added to the growing collection they rely upon to maintain their fragile sense of identity. This helps explain why numbers can become so important. Some narcissists keep mental records. Some proudly boast about previous conquests. Some describe intimate experiences as though they are trophies, accomplishments, or measurable achievements. Others quietly compare themselves with friends or rivals, constantly evaluating whether they have accumulated enough evidence to feel superior. To someone who experiences intimacy as genuine emotional connection, this perspective can seem immature, superficial, or even deeply pathetic. But from the narcissist's internal psychological world, these encounters are rarely just about pleasure or affection. They function as repeated attempts to fill an internal emptiness that never remains filled for very long. Every new encounter offers another brief moment of reassurance, another temporary confirmation of worth, another fragile piece of evidence that they matter. Yet because that reassurance comes from outside rather than within, it inevitably fades. And when it fades, the search begins once again. Not because they have found genuine connection, but because they are still chasing the feeling that authentic self-worth was supposed to provide all along. From the narcissist's point of view, however, these experiences often serve an entirely different function. They become a way of gathering evidence, evidence that they are attractive, evidence that they are wanted, evidence that they can influence others, evidence that they possess power, and evidence that they hold importance. In many situations, the encounter itself is not the central focus. What matters more is what the experience represents in their mind. The situation becomes another piece of proof in their continuous effort to create a secure and stable sense of personal value. This is one of the reasons why the idea of conquest can become more significant than genuine connection. True emotional connection demands vulnerability. It requires openness, honesty, and the willingness to reveal the parts of yourself that may not always be accepted. Real intimacy creates the possibility of being rejected not for an image, but for who you truly are beneath the surface. For someone with narcissistic patterns, that possibility can feel deeply threatening. Conquest feels much safer. It provides a feeling of achievement without requiring emotional exposure. It allows them to experience a sense of superiority and importance without having to face the fear of being truly seen. Instead of risking vulnerability, they can focus on gaining attention, admiration, and confirmation from others. Pay close attention to the way some narcissists describe their intimate experiences when they are speaking openly and without filters. There is often a noticeable focus on obtaining, achieving, winning, or collecting. The way they describe these situations may reveal a sense of possession rather than emotional closeness. Their words may highlight what they accomplished, what they gained, or what they managed to prove. The language itself often reveals the deeper psychological process taking place. Other people can begin to be viewed less as complete individuals and more as symbols. They become representations of success, desirability, and status. They become evidence that the narcissist can use to support a certain image of themselves. Within this internal story, people may stop being experienced as fully separate human beings with their own emotions and needs. Instead, they become part of a larger attempt to maintain a desired self-image. This is where the pattern of pursuing many different people becomes especially meaningful. It is not simply that the person is seeking anyone available. The variety itself can strengthen the illusion. The more different types of people they attract, the more convincing the evidence appears in their own mind. If they can gain attention from people with different personalities, different backgrounds, different social positions, or different levels of attractiveness, they may interpret this as proof that their appeal has no limits. They begin to create a powerful internal narrative. They convince themselves that their charm is universal. They convince themselves that they are extraordinary. They convince themselves that they possess something unique that makes them impossible to resist. But beneath all of this, another issue remains unresolved. The inner emptiness does not truly disappear. The insecurity continues. The uncertainty remains. The fragile sense of self-worth remains underneath the surface. Because of this, no amount of external evidence ever feels completely satisfying. One encounter may create temporary comfort, but eventually that feeling disappears. One achievement may create a brief sense of control, but eventually that feeling fades as well. One person's admiration may temporarily cover the emptiness, but sooner or later the emptiness returns. And when that temporary relief disappears, the search begins again. This explains why some narcissistic individuals move rapidly from one person to another. It explains why they may become emotionally or physically involved with someone and almost immediately begin searching for another source of attention. The previous experience did not solve the deeper issue. It only created a short distraction from it. For a brief moment, the validation felt real. The sense of importance felt real. The feeling of being desired felt real. But eventually, those emotions weaken, and when they do, the narcissist finds themselves facing the same internal discomfort they were attempting to avoid from the beginning. So the pattern continues. Another pursuit, another person, another attempt to gain approval. Another effort to prove something that can never truly be confirmed through outside validation alone. The painful reality is that the narcissist often believes the next person will finally provide what everyone before them failed to provide. They believe the next relationship, the next attraction, or the next conquest will finally create a lasting feeling of satisfaction. They believe the next moment of admiration will finally silence the insecurity inside them. But because the deeper struggle exists internally, no external person can permanently repair it. No amount of praise is enough. No amount of attention is enough. No amount of desire from others is enough. And so the search continues, not because they have discovered something meaningful, but because they are still attempting to escape something uncomfortable within themselves. The people they pursue become temporary answers to a much deeper, unresolved question. Until that internal conflict is faced and understood, each new person eventually becomes another part of an endless cycle of seeking validation, importance, and emotional relief. The issue is not necessarily that the first encounter was disappointing in a normal sense. It is not that the experience failed because it lacked excitement, pleasure, or satisfaction. The deeper problem is that it never touched the real wound that created the desire for it in the first place. The experience may have created temporary confidence. It may have produced excitement. It may have offered a short-lived feeling of power, attraction, or desirability, but it did not remove the emptiness underneath. It did not answer the questions that continue to exist beneath the surface, the questions of whether they are truly valuable, whether they genuinely matter, whether they are worthy without needing constant confirmation from others. And when the emotional intensity fades, those questions return. The insecurity returns, the uncertainty returns, the need for reassurance returns. Because the original struggle remains untouched, the narcissist feels driven to search for more proof, more attention, and more validation. They are chasing a feeling that supports the image they desperately want to maintain about themselves. When you truly recognize this pattern, there is something profoundly tragic about it because what they are seeking can never genuinely be achieved through these approaches. No amount of outside approval can build authentic self-esteem. No amount of praise or admiration can establish a secure and lasting identity. No amount of attention or desire from others can permanently remove the emptiness that exists within. The narcissist continues searching because the validation provides temporary comfort, but that comfort quickly fades away. The sense of relief feels powerful for a brief moment, then it disappears. The confidence appears convincing for a short time, then it begins to fall apart. Because of this, they return to the same behaviors repeatedly. They gather proof that never completely reassures them. They collect experiences that never bring true fulfillment. They pursue validation that vanishes almost immediately after they receive it. The pattern continues without end, and the people who become part of these interactions are often not truly recognized as complete individuals with their own emotions, needs, and inner worlds.